Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The Black House. Oh, how I love the Black House. It captivates me. Fun and debauchery abound, a den of indulgence and excitement. Every Friday I find myself drawn here, and my dastardly actions always go unheeded until I have had my fun and I'm well gone. Then there is all hell to pay. I have left chaos in my wake. I am nestled as usual in a secluded corner, my little nook, where I secrete myself with a book until an interesting or exotic bird of the female persuasion catches my eye. I never actually read the book, but I find if you frequent any bar book in hand, you can enjoy a reasonable amount of time in relative peace, except for a few snorts of derision now and again. They just assume you are nerdy and have no social skills. But little do they know that I possess both a passion for literature and the ability to engage when I can be bothered. The desire rarely crops up. I plan to accumulate a choice of whiskeys, so I can survey my prey without showing my hand too early, and I can surreptitiously survey the room. The bartender is used to my appearance, so doesn't flinch at my pale skin anymore, and is happy with my custom, as the whiskeys don't come cheap here. He doesn't even attempt the petty small talk, just takes my money and nods. We have a little arrangement, a mutual understanding, where if I identify something or someone of interest, I let him know, and he, in turn, lets me know what the object of my desire's chosen tipple is, and he shares with me the preferred drink of my target. I often wonder if he knows exactly what I am up to, but if so, he never lets on. If I just wanted sex, engaging solely in sexual encounters, it would be so much easier, as that's what a lot of people come here for. However, I have a distinct craving for blood, its pulsating, pumping, flowing essence. The exhibitionist in me needs the little scare that this time I just might be caught. Ah, the extra thrill of fellow drinkers breezing by as I indulge my taste buds. I have been known to get too excited and must retire to my little nook to remove the skin from my fangs to ensure they are still in pristine condition and replace their covering veneers. No, before you ask, I am not a vampire. I paid a fortune in dental work to get my fangs, to achieve my desired appearance. I will not die if I don't get to satisfy my cravings, merely languish and fester in boredom and misery. Ah, there she is, an interesting, nice, and petite woman. I used to believe that bigger women, big-boned girls, that their size would enhance flavor, make it meatier and tangier, but I was mistaken. All that excess fat and flavor only gets in the way of the pure delight of the blood. I tend not to waste my time, so I catch the bartender's attention to make sure he is aware of what she is drinking. How ironic that she's having a Bloody Mary, a drink I love. I gesture for the bartender to pour me a double Bloody Mary, and it's sent over. I pop in my little pill, and am ready to go. It simply makes them a bit drowsy. I'm not doing any harm, but they never have the will or energy after partaking to stop my suckling, ensuring they will not resist my advances. They'll explain away and rationalize any marks or cuts in the morning, thinking the sex got a wee bit energetic and will be too ashamed to mention to anyone a one-night stand, or as I find it much nicer to say, a fleeting romance. She gracefully and gratefully accepts my offering, and together we retreat to my secluded spot. The bite she inflicts on my neck and the lump she takes out of it is sure to leave a lasting mark that will undoubtedly become a permanent scar. The intensity of her sinking her teeth into my neck excruciating, and those fangs are absolutely real. It's impossible to deny their authenticity. As I let out a terrified yelp, the bartender, seemingly amused by my distress, adds a small pill to my whiskey as a gesture of kindness, although I can't help but feel unworthy of such mercy after what I did to his niece on his night off. I never intended to cause real harm. Unbeknownst to me, I inadvertently ended her life, mistaking her stillness being from the effect of the pill, like countless others I had met before. Now, her lifeless body lies in the cold, unforgiving, and unyielding morgue. The specter of revenge, as always, is on the menu and lingers, hanging heavily in the atmosphere and air of the black house. I can feel my inert and lifeless body being lifted and thrown onto a cart. I am fully aware that my ultimate fate lies within the morgue. I find myself positioned next to the bartender's niece, and apart from the marks and bruises on her neck, she retains a certain beauty. I almost feel like partaking of her juices again and indulging in her essence once more. However, I suspect that her vitality has long since faded, making my lifeless form incapable of deriving any pleasure from it. I had hoped that my assailant might leave me to wander the earth forever, more with real fangs this time. But not a chance. I wasn't that fortunate. She decided to finish me off and bring my existence to a permanent close. I find it perplexing that the bartender's niece, whose name I need to inquire about, is smiling at me, despite being in a similarly unfortunate situation, albeit appearing far more attractive. Are we destined to spend time in the afterlife together forevermore? I burst into laughter when I muster the courage to ask the question, and she responds, "Mary, my name is Mary, Scratchy." Hold on, the line went a bit scratchy. "Sandy? You're still there?" "Hi, Sandy. As I was saying, I think we have rats in the house. The night before last we were in bed and some god-awful noise woke me up. And no, it wasn't Ian snoring. You do grow accustomed to such things over 50 years of marriage, believe it or not. No, it was a scratching sound coming from the skirting behind the headboard. So I give Ian a good shove. No luck there. The man would have slept through Pompeii without so much as a twitch, let me tell you. Although, I don't imagine he can be sleeping all that well. That rash is back. I told you about his rash, didn't I? I keep telling him, stop scratching it. But will he listen? Anyway, at first I thought it was the pipes, you know. I swear the water system in this house hasn't been replaced since the Romans. I've told Ian, told him 1,000 times. Ian, I say, we have to get the pipes fixed. One of these days they'll burst, and it'll be me. You and the cats floating around the house on the bloody sofa like it's Noah's Ark. So I get off the bed, and I stoop to listen, and immediately I can tell it isn't the pipes at all. It's quite distinct. The sound of rummaging against the wood like little claws, burrowing. Rats do have claws, don't they? And the thing is, last night I heard the same sound, but this time it was coming from behind the cabinet. You know, the big one. The one with Ian's old tennis trophies. And I didn't even bother trying to wake the lug up this time. No, I jump out of bed, and I pull out the cabinet, and lo and behold, droppings all over the carpet. Not only that, but the same irritating sound started at the other end of the room by the bed again, and not 10 minutes later, in the wall by the phone, right where I'm sitting now. Oh, I do hope they aren't chewing through the telephone wires. Aren't telephone wires rat-resistant? I'd hate it if I couldn't talk to you, Sandy. Could that be why the line is scratchy? Speaking of scratchy, I woke up this morning and my scalp was itching all over. Good job Ian's asleep, because I've been telling him not to scratch. And here I am scratching so hard my hair's falling out like it's bloody Chernobyl. I wonder if the cats have fleas, but they've never had them before. Oh, I'm so stupid. Of course, it must be the rats carrying the fleas. There are at least 10 of them now, all rummaging around, picking at the plaster, the persistent little buggers. I swear if Ian wasn't here and they all broke through at once, I'd have to call the police. For the life of me, I wouldn't know what the hell to do. I've cleaned the bedroom though, and, oh, by the way, I bought some of those new metal scourers. You know the ones? Everyone said how good they are. I've been all around the tops and the skirting boards with them, one in each hand like a bloody Dalek. Exterminate! Exterminate! They do the job, though. My goodness, the bedroom has never been so spotless. You simply must try them. Sandy, you don't think they'd work on fleas, do you? I'm starting to feel them on my arms and legs as well as in my hair. I hope they don't aggravate Ian's rash. It's already spread up his neck and over his face. I'm looking at him now, the poor little bugger. He hasn't scratched in a while, though, bless his soul. A fighter, aren't you, Ian? Ian? He could sleep through Hiroshima and Nagasaki? That man could. Hold on. Goodness, can you hear that? There must be 20 of them now. How do they multiply so quickly? Go away. I don't have any cheese. My husband can't eat cheese. The willful little buggers. Any more, and they'll have the telephone wires, I'm sure of it. If the line goes dead, I'm sorry, love. I'll pop in that phone booth near the pharmacy on Wednesday when I go to get Ian's prescriptions. He's on so many pills now, he rattles when he walks. Not that he walks much. The lug. Let's go for a walk, Ian, I say. But will he listen? Let's get you out of the house, Ian. It'll be good for you. No luck there, Sandy. Let me tell you. Oh, speaking of luck, did you manage to get hold of that exterminator that Ian recommended? You didn't? Ian. Ian! Sandy says the telephone number we gave her for the exterminator is disconnected. It's a bloody shame, Sandy. So, I guess the rats are still there, scratching, burrowing into the woodwork, crawling all around the walls, are they? I bet you can't even sleep of a night, can you? Poor thing. How awfully cruel. How many did you say? 50 now? Jesus, they're multiplying. That's practically the Black Death. What does your husband have to say about all this, Sandy? Surely he... Hang on a second, love. Don't go anywhere. Oh, those new metal scourers do work on fleas. Oh, ooh, that's the ticket. I must call the cats in. They'll be right as rain in no time. Dalek, exterminate, exterminate. Sandy, you're still there? Your husband must have something to say about all this. Ian! Ian! The rats are going to get through and Sandy doesn't know what the hell to do. Ian! Wake up, Ian! I'm so sorry, Sandy. The rash has spread all over, bless his soul. Sandy, hello? Hello? Oh no, the line's gone all scratchy. They must have got to the telephone wires. You hear that, Ian? I said they must have got to the telephone wires. Ian, I love you, darling. But goodness, you could sleep through hell itself, you could. Bloody lug. Who sleeps 3 days and 3 nights without so much as a twitch? I know what you need. How about a record? Okay, what do we have here? Aha. Glenn Miller. Perfect. Isn't it scratchy compared to the newer ones? But all the best ones are scratchy, aren't they? Look, darling, I'm dancing. La la, la la la. Can you see me dancing just like I used to? Look at me go. I'm 19 again. Oh, don't mind all the blood. It's only flea's blood. I'll clean it off later with my new scourers. Why don't you get up and dance with me? La la, la la la. Come on, Ian. Ian, wake up. Please wake up. Please wake up. They'll scratch their way in, Ian. They'll get through the walls if you don't wake up. Dark black stone. In April of 1919, shortly after the end of World War I, Colonel James Forrest Kane of the Royal West African Frontier Force was stationed in Cameroon for a period of 1 year, which might be extended depending on the prevailing conditions in the territory at that time. He was to serve as the commanding officer of a garrison of 200 soldiers stationed at Douala, a port city where the river Wouri pours out into the Atlantic Ocean. There was some social unrest, but no major uprisings during Kane's term there, so he was able to spend much of his time as he pleased. He was increasingly thinking about his financial future at that time. His wife had died 2 years earlier, and his son Miles was only 23 years old and just getting started in life. Other British officers returned to England with small fortunes in gems and diamonds and other things. This was Kane's opportunity to procure such assets for himself before his inevitable trip back home to Manchester. At first, his conscience weighed on him, but he managed to find ways to justify his actions. He had come to Africa to protect the native people and rid the presence of Germany from the continent. A debt was owed. Still, when he lined up his troops holding rifles outside of a home or a church or a temple, as he inventoried the valuables inside and took what he pleased, he knew this was not honorable in the least. One day, Kane led his men on a march to a northern part of the territory to investigate a tip about a Maka temple that contained a rare and priceless artifact. Upon arrival, he was immediately disappointed to see what looked like a dilapidated old wooden hut seated at the far end of a dirt road in a small jungle village. Kane's interpreter, a 17-year-old native of Douala named Buntu, walked to the doorway of the small temple and spoke some words in a raised voice. He announced that Colonel Kane had come to the village to ensure the safety of the Maka people and to receive gifts for his protection. Then 2 of his soldiers armed with rifles entered the temple. A few moments later, they called for Colonel Kane, telling him it was safe to enter. Inside it was dark, smoky, and smelling of strange, charred herbs, lit only by a dozen candles spread out in various locations to spread their thin luminescence. There was an open dirt floor with a few stained rugs, and just before this was a strange altar composed of a mixture of wood, bone, stone, horns, antlers, and dried furs of strange and unknowable origin. Kane approached the altar and realized there was a very small man wrapped in a dark robe seated behind it. He was barefoot, his feet filthy, the robe pulled up over his head. He was very old, and his skin was sallow, but his eyes shone with a certain light. He stared at Kane silently as the colonel began to inventory the items on the altar. He started at the far left and began working his way to the right, briefly inspecting the various relics along the way. There was nothing that looked at all valuable to his eye until he reached the center of the altar and saw the large black diamond seated in a hand-carved wooden display setting. He reached for it, and the old man behind the altar spoke up sharply. Buntu translated his words. "He says you do not want that. He says you should not touch it." Kane gave the old man a sharp look, and then slowly removed the black diamond from its wooden setting. It was roughly hewn, but it was very large. There were jewelers back in Antwerp and London who could cut this stone perfectly and make it ready for sale at an optimal price. He looked at the old man again as he tucked the black diamond into his jacket pocket. The old man shook his head ever so slightly and repeated part of what he had just said in a dry and scratchy voice. "He says you do not want that," Buntu translated. "Jambe," the old man hissed. Buntu paused for a few seconds. He said jambe. It is spirit. It is a dark spirit. Maka people very much believe in these things. It is part of their religion. Cain nodded at the old man silently, and then waved a hand at the two soldiers standing behind him, and they all walked out together. Over the next few weeks, people around the colonel began to report a number of strange and disturbing incidents. He began wearing his uniform in an increasingly disheveled fashion. He went from inappropriately wild laughter to manic, inconsolable sobbing in the span of less than 60 seconds in the officers' mess hall at dinner one night. And then one day, two of his fellow officers walked into the barracks hall and found him seated on the floor in only his underpants with his eyes closed tight, tears running down his face, and a .45 pistol pressed up against his temple, pulling the trigger repeatedly. The gun was loaded, but it had jammed. The following week, Colonel Cain was discharged from the military and sent back home on a cargo ship to the port of Manchester. His 2 travel trunks, containing all of his personal items, including the black diamond, were sent with him. Upon arrival in England, he was brought to an insane asylum where he lived out the remainder of his days in a state of constant hysteria until he found a way to hang himself 3 months later. The 2 travel trunks were sent to his home in Manchester, where his son Miles went through the contents and sorted everything out. Miles knew very little about precious gems, but he had a friend who worked at a jeweler's shop, so he took all of the stones to be appraised, and he was stunned when he learned the potential value of the large black diamond. His friend called in a rare gems expert, and after close inspection of the stone, he was advised to have it properly cut and set as a gold necklace pendant. It was just too big for a ring, and then it would likely fetch at least £100,000 sterling at auction. Miles took this advice and had the gem cut and set. It was 175 carats when it was finished. Miles kept it in a small safe in his father's house as he awaited an auction day that never came. People around Miles, his friends and co-workers, all started to notice increasingly strange and uncharacteristic behavior from him. Then one day he stopped showing up for work. Then he stopped answering visitors at his front door. And then, after a few weeks, he stepped off the platform into the path of an oncoming train. As Miles had no wife, no children, and no last will and testament, the disposition of his estate, which largely consisted of his father's former estate, was adjudicated by the courts, which determined that the rightful heir was his father's only brother, Graham Cain, who had moved to Boston shortly after returning from the war in France. Graham received notification of his inheritance from a barrister assigned by the court. The primary asset was the house in Manchester and its contents, which a local estate agent could sell for him and wire the proceeds afterward. He agreed to this, and about a week later, he received a telegram from the estate agent, a woman named Maggie Harlow, which read, "To Graham Cain, Boston, Massachusetts, Mr. Cain. While inventorying your brother's house in Manchester, I found most of the common items, such as furniture, kitchen items, clothing, tools, etc. Nothing of any significant value. However, in the basement, I found 2 travel trunks filled with various exotic items and artifacts, most of which seem to be from Africa. I am not familiar with the marketing of such items, and I would like to ship them to you for your review and disposal. Please advise if this is acceptable. Thank you. Cheers, Maggie Harlow." Graham confirmed that this would be fine. and then he awaited the arrival of the 2 travel trunks. Graham returned from the Somme in good spirits. Many of his fellow soldiers suffered from shell shock, but he seemed fine. Then, 3 years later, shortly after he had a chance to inspect the contents of his brother's travel trunks, he started displaying some odd behavior. He was arrested twice for wandering the streets outside his Boston home naked in broad daylight. His wife Nancy was worried that he was finally starting to show signs of mental distress from the war. A hearing was scheduled to determine if he would need to be hospitalized, and he was confined to his home until the hearing date. He shot himself in the temple with his government-issued service pistol 2 nights prior to that hearing. Graham's only child, Kevin, was only 4 years old at the time, and Nancy had her hands full as a sudden widow. She never even looked at the 2 crates stored down in that dark corner of the basement. There, the 2 trunks remained for a very long time. Kevin never once concerned himself with their contents until his mother died over 2 decades later, and he drove up to Boston to clear out the house and prepare it for sale. During the 4 days that Kevin spent packing up and cleaning out his parents' home in the North End, he had much on his mind. Things were getting sketchy at his job. Corporate had shut down 4 regional offices in the last 6 months, and there were already 3 in the Boston suburbs at that time. Furthermore, his wife was starting to spend more and more time outside of the home, particularly at nighttime, and he was starting to become suspicious about where she was going and who she was seeing. And lastly, his 12-year-old daughter Diane was exhibiting some alarming symptoms of depression. He noticed this on his own and tried to just tell himself that she was going through a time of change. But when the principal of her school called Kevin and his wife in for a meeting to discuss these concerns, he could no longer sweep it under the rug. The source of the problem seemed to be that Diane was being bullied by some of the other girls in her grade. A girl named Katie Kelson was apparently the ringleader of a group that liked to make fun of Diane and tease her, and they frequently played practical jokes on her at recess. At first, she handled it with humor, but as the nature of the treatment spiraled downward, she soon couldn't just laugh off the constant ostracization. Every day became a dark day. On the final afternoon that he spent cleaning out his parents' house, Kevin finally got around to inventorying the 2 travel trunks down in the basement. There were a lot of interesting items, but inside an ornate wooden cigar box lined in blue velvet, there were about 24 small diamonds and gems, a beautiful large black gem affixed to a pendant on a gold chain, and 3 handwritten notes folded up in a stack and laying there among the rest. The black stone was inside a square hard plastic container, a piece of white tape on the lid with handwritten lettering that read, "Warning, do not touch." Kevin inspected some of the smaller loose stones and then read the first of the 3 notes. In faded ink, it read, "I was warned not to touch this black diamond. I did not heed that warning, and now I am become undone. Fear for the sanctity of your mind and the destiny of your immortal soul. Do not repeat my foolishness. Colonel James Forrest Kane, 4th August, 1919. He paused for a moment, then read the next note. I did not heed my father's warnings. Now it is too late. I don't know where I have gone. Miles Kane, 2nd February 1921. Kevin looked at the black diamond again for a moment, and then he picked up the last note. This one read, I thought I saw true horrors at war in the Somme, but I knew nothing of horror until I held this black diamond in my hand. I should have heeded the warnings in the other notes contained herein. I write this while I still can. I am rapidly descending into the fires of hell. Graham Kane, 14th October, 1922. Kevin thought about what he had just read and stared at the diamond in the plastic box for a while. He quickly decided to heed the warnings. He knew how his father, uncle, and cousin had all died. He closed the cigar box but removed it from the trunk and brought it upstairs and placed it in his suitcase. At the end of that day, Kevin drove the hour ride back to his home in Carlisle. When he got there, his wife was out, who knows where, and the door to Diane's bedroom was closed, but he could see the light was on. He knocked, waited, then knocked again. A short time later, she opened the door. She didn't look at him. She looked at her feet. "Hey, Dad, what's up?" She sounded sad. "Nothing. I just haven't seen you in a few days and I wanted to say hi. See how you're doing?" "I'm fine. Just doing some homework. What's for dinner? I'm starving." "Well, Mom's out somewhere and I'm not cooking, so let's just get some takeout. Whatever you want. Sound good?" "Yeah, sure. Let's get pizza." "Just pizza? How about Chinese?" "I just want pizza. Just get a large cheese pie from Mario's." "Okay, I'll call it in and go pick it up. I'll be back in about a half hour." "Okay, I'm gonna keep working on my homework until then." "What are you working on?" "Just schoolwork stuff." She closed the door. On a gloomy Wednesday evening 2 weeks later, Kevin came home from work and found his wife in Diane's bedroom, sitting with her and consoling her quietly. Diane was crying. Katie Kelson's big Christmas party was that Friday night, and the vicious little creature had made a point of openly handing out written invitations from a paper bag to every girl in the class except Diane. When she arrived in front of Diane's desk, she said, "Oops, all out. Sorry," and turned the empty paper bag upside down. The whole class laughed, and Diane left in tears. The following day, Diane was hit and killed by a big black Lincoln Continental traveling fast down West Main Street. Katie Kelson and a group of other girls were there when it happened, and a Massachusetts state police officer was passing by and was on the scene immediately. The girls started to walk away when he pulled up, but he ordered them to stop so he could take some witness statements. Then he called in the ambulance. It was too late for the ambulance. Katie claimed that she thought it was suicide, and once that word was out of her mouth, the other girls all quickly echoed it. They said that Diane was kind of a strange and sad girl, and when they walked down the sidewalk, she was just standing at the curb, waiting, and then she dove out in front of the car. The Stati took down all their names, addresses, and phone numbers, and wrote down the critical details of their statements. Afterwards, a man came up to the officer and provided a different account. He was seated at the bus stop just across the street when it happened, and he said that the group of girls chased Diane out into the street, and one of them pushed her down just before the car came through and crushed her beneath its wheels. However, that man was black, homeless, draped in an old blanket and reeking of booze and cigarettes, all of his belongings in the shopping cart by his side. The officer thanked the man, but did not take a formal statement. The ambulance had arrived. He had other things to do. The next day, when school let out, Katie Kelson left by the front door with a few of her friends. She knew Diane's father, so when she saw Kevin standing there, she blanched slightly at first, but she shook it off of her face quickly. "Hi, Mr. Kane. I just want to say I am so sorry about what happened to Diane. It was just terrible. We were all there." "Thank you, Katie. I appreciate your condolences. My wife and I met with the police last night, and it clearly sounds like she just brought this on herself. She was very depressed recently. We had no idea that it was this bad. We're just stunned and trying to make sense of it." His eyes teared up a little. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Kane. We're all really sad, too." "Thanks, Katie. Hey, can I just talk to you for a minute?" He gestured at a space by the steps to the front door, just 10 yards away. Katie looked nervous at first, but then she nodded and began walking with him, her friends waiting where they were, shooting non-discreet glances far too often. So, I know you were Diane's friend, and she had one really beautiful piece of jewelry that my wife and I want you to have. He withdrew a plastic box from his coat pocket with the remains of some white tape on the lid and opened it. Inside, there was a large black diamond pendant on a gold chain. Kevin carefully shook out the chain first into his leather-gloved palm, and then lifted the brilliantly cut stone from the container and held it up for her to see. Her eyes went wide. "May I put it on you? I'd like to see you wearing it. It will remind me of Diane." She agreed, and Kevin draped it around her neck, making sure that the stone slid down her throat and onto her upper chest before he clasped it shut. "Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Kane. I love it." "You deserve it, Katie. Merry Christmas. Make sure to let all your friends check it out too. Insatiable, Part 2. Her voice, trembling, cut through the silence. "Daddy?" The word scraped against something deep inside me, something buried under the roar of the hunger. My body moved before I could think, lurching forward, one decayed hand reaching. Her face twisted in horror as she stumbled back, pressing herself against the wall. "No, Daddy, stop. Stop. Please, God, stop." But I couldn't. The hunger tore through me, relentless, demanding. Her heartbeat echoed in my ears, a steady drum calling me forward. I reached for her, my jagged breath wheezing like rusted hinges. Her tears glistened in the dim light, her small hands trembling as she held them up, useless shields against what I was about to do. I was almost on her when the memory hit, sharp and blinding. Her tiny hand in mine, sticky with melted ice cream, her laughter bubbling up as she looked at me, wide-eyed with trust. "I love you, Daddy." The memory burned, more painful than the hunger. I stopped mid-lunge, my clawed hand hanging inches from her face. "Get away from her!" Emily's voice rang out, fierce and trembling. She barreled into me with all her strength, the impact jarring but barely enough to move me. A flash of silver caught the weak light. She had a knife. Emily. My voice was a wet croak, unrecognizable. She slashed at me, the blade tearing into the rotted flesh of my shoulder. I didn't feel it. She planted herself between Grace and me, her chest heaving, her eyes locked on mine. "You won't touch her," she spat, the fear in her voice barely hidden under the force of her words. Emily shouted without turning, her voice ragged. "Go, Grace! Don't look back!" Grace hesitated, her tiny figure trembling, then bolted down the stairs. "Run, Grace. Run far away from me, baby." The sound of Grace's retreating footsteps faded, leaving only Emily and me in the suffocating silence. She squared her shoulders, her trembling hand gripping the knife like it could keep the darkness at bay. The hallway narrowed as Emily stepped forward, knife trembling in her hand. The dim light from the shattered bulb above flickered across her face, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on mine. "Stay back," she said, her voice steady, even as the blade shook. "Stop! Stop! Please, God, stop me. This is my love. This is my life." It wouldn't let me stop. The hunger surged like a wave, driving me forward. My rotting legs dragged against the floor, my fingers twitching as they reached for her. I screamed at my body to stop, but it kept going. "Stop. Please, for God's sake, stop." But the hunger roared. It was a force, pulling my body like strings on a marionette. Emily lunged forward, slashing the knife, the blade slicing into my forearm. A wet sound, something that used to be flesh tearing open, oozing dark, thick rot. I didn't feel it. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. She'd been expecting pain, a reaction, but there was nothing. "David, listen to me." Emily's voice broke as she stabbed again, tears streaking her face. "You're in there. I know you are. You love us. You love Grace." But her words barely reached through the roaring hunger, and my hands moved without me, reaching for her. Her expression faltered, the resolve cracking just slightly, but she gripped the knife tighter. She stepped back, placing herself fully between me and stairs. I lunged. The knife slashed again, this time catching my ribs. I felt the wet scrape of the blade against bone, the sound sharper than the pain I couldn't feel. She screamed for Grace again, her voice raw and desperate. "Run, baby! Run!" Grace's sobs echoed from the bottom of the staircase, her small figure darting out of sight. I lunged, my decayed fingers closing around Emily, seizing her in a moment when her eyes flicked toward Grace. A heartbeat of distraction was all the hunger needed to strike. Emily screamed, her voice cracking into something raw and animalistic. Her fists pounded against my chest, each blow weaker than the last. Her nails raked my skin, peeling away rotted flesh, exposing yellowed bone. She twisted, fought, but I held her like a vice. Her body was warm, so warm, it burned against the rot of my hands. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and terrified. For half a heartbeat, I thought I could stop. Then the hunger surged again, tearing through me. My body moved before I could think. My teeth sank into her neck, tearing through skin and muscle with a sickening wet snap. Hot blood surged into my mouth, metallic and thick, spilling down my throat in waves. The taste was fire and ecstasy, searing through what little humanity was left in me, and I hated how good it felt. Emily's scream turned into a gurgle, her hands clawing at my face, pushing weakly as I tore deeper. Stop. 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 But I couldn't. The hunger was everything. Her body jerked once, then stilled. Her blood ran warm and steady over my hands, pooling at my feet. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, couldn't understand. Her eyes found mine, wide and glassy, but there was something else there, a flicker of recognition, a memory, love, maybe, or disgust. Then it was gone. The light in her eyes snuffed out, leaving only the dull, empty stare of the dead. I let her fall, her body crumpling to the floor like something broken, discarded. My hands shook, slick with her blood, her warmth already fading. I wanted to scream, to claw at myself, to rip this hunger out of me with my bare hands. But there was nothing left. Nothing but the hunger and her lifeless body at my feet. "Emily," I tried to whisper, the word choking in my throat. Black ooze dripped from my mouth, pooling with her blood on the cold, unforgiving floor, the hunger inside me roaring in triumph. No. What have I done? Then I heard it, a small, sharp gasp. Grace. I turned, my body sluggish. She stood at the base of the stairs, her small hand clutching the railing. Her eyes were wide, red from crying, her face pale. "Daddy?" she whispered. Her voice cracked something inside me that should have died with Emily. I tried to speak, to tell her I was sorry. But when I opened my mouth, all that came out was a moan, wet and broken. Black ooze dripped from my chin, pooling at my feet. Grace screamed, her voice breaking into choking sobs. "Mommy!" No, Mommy, please. She stumbled back, gripping the railing as if it could hold her world together. My chest, if I still had one, felt like it was caving in, but the hunger didn't care. It surged again, pulling me toward her. Graksh, I croaked, the word barely intelligible, but she heard it. And she turned and ran, her small figure disappearing into the dark. I stumbled forward, my body following her scent, even as my mind begged for the darkness to take me. The hunger stirred again, twisting inside me, demanding I follow. I looked down at Emily. Her blood was still warm on my hands, her lifeless body crumpled and broken at my feet. I am losing everything. The hunger didn't care. It roared, pulling me to my feet, dragging me after Grace. Number, please, let her go. But the hunger will never let go. The street stretched out before me, empty and cold. My feet drag against the pavement, leaving wet, dark smears behind. The hunger had quieted, but it wasn't gone. It never was. It coiled beneath my skin, waiting for the next surge. I stumbled past darkened houses, their windows like hollow eyes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, sharp and frantic. I froze, listening, but the sound faded into the hum of distant traffic. What am I doing? Emily's face swam before me, frozen in that final, lifeless stare. Her blood still clung to my hands, thick and sticky. My body ached, not from the fight, but from something deeper, a guilt so heavy it made every step feel like wading through tar. Then a flash. Sterile white walls. A row of test tubes, their labels blurred and meaningless. A shattered vial, the liquid spreading across my face and hands like blood. I stumbled, my shoulder hitting a street lamp. The cold metal bit into my decayed skin, snapping me back to the present. The hunger stirred, hissing in my ears, but the memory clawed its way back, stronger now. We shouldn't push this far. My own voice, frantic, echoed in my head. I could almost feel the heat of a lab, the hum of machinery. But the memory didn't stay. It bled, twisting into something else. Emily laughing, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand, her hair falling loose around her face. Grace on the living room floor, cradling her teddy bear, her smile lighting up the room. Stop, don't think about them. The hunger seized those memories, warping them. Emily's laughter turned into her scream. Grace's smile faded, replaced by wide, terrified eyes. I doubled over, gripping my knees. The hunger whispered, "Keep moving. She's still out there." I obeyed. The woods were silent except for the sound of my feet dragging through the underbrush. The world was muffled here, the thick canopy of trees blotting out the moonlight, the air heavy with damp earth and rot. My breath, or what passed for it, came in short, ragged bursts. The hunger had returned, gnawing at my insides like a rabid animal. Then I saw her. At first, it was just a shadow, something flickering between the trees. But as I stepped closer, the shape took form. Emily. Number. It can't be. She stood with her back to me, her head tilted at an odd angle. Her clothes hung in tatters where I had shredded them, dark stains splattered across her blouse. Her arms hung stiffly at her sides, and her posture was too rigid, too dead. Emily? But voice cracked, low and growling. She turned. Her eyes were clouded, a milky gray that seemed to pierce straight through me. Her skin, once smooth and warm, sagged in loose patches, exposing butchered flesh. Her mouth hung open slightly, lips cracked and blackened. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. My mind had been slipping since the hunger took hold, twisting memories into cruel replicas of reality. But this wasn't a memory. She was here, standing in front of me. She wasn't human anymore. My hands trembled as I stepped closer. Her head tilted further, her movements jerky, like a puppet with tangled strings. Her gaze locked on mine, and something flickered in her expression, a shadow of recognition. The hunger in me stirred, hissing and coiling like a living thing. I could feel it inside her too, like a heat radiating from her decayed form. It linked us, bound us in a way that no words could. She took a step forward, her movements uneven, but deliberate. I didn't move. I couldn't. Her mouth opened, and a low, gurgling sound emerged. Half a growl, half a moan. She took another step, then stopped. We stood there, facing each other. Then the sound of footsteps broke the silence. A man appeared on the path, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He was walking a dog, a large, lumbering thing that barked at the sight of us. The man froze, his eyes darting between me and Emily. The hunger surged, roaring in my ears. My body moved before I could think, lurching toward him. Emily moved too, a grotesque mirror of my movements. The man screamed as we collided with him, our hands tearing at his clothes, his flesh. His flashlight clattered to the ground, the beam illuminating the scene in harsh, stuttering flashes. I felt my teeth sink into his shoulder, the hot rush of blood filling my mouth. Beside me, Emily clawed at his chest, her fingers digging deep into his skin. The dog barked frantically, pulling at its leash, but the man's screams drowned out everything else. His warmth seeped into me, dulling the hunger for a brief, fleeting moment. I turned to Emily. Her face was smeared with blood, her eyes still clouded but alive with something primal. We fed together, tearing him apart piece by piece. His screams faded, replaced by the wet, sickening sounds of flesh being ripped from bone. When it was over, we stood there, our bodies slick with blood. The man's lifeless form crumpled between us. The dog had fled, its leash trailing behind it. Emily looked at me, her head tilting again. The recognition was still there, faint but undeniable. This wasn't love. It was something else, something twisted and monstrous. But in that moment, it felt like we were connected, bound by the hunger and the carnage we'd wrought together. I wanted to scream, to claw my way out of this nightmare. But all I could do was stare at her and wonder how much further I could fall. The first one appeared the next night. Emily and I had just finished. A man in a suit stumbling from a bar, his tie loose around his neck. His screams were already fading, his body crumpled on the ground when the hunger in me finally dulled. I was wiping the blood from my face when I felt it. A shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. I turned, and there he was. He shouldn't have been moving. His chest was ripped open, his throat little more than a mangled red mess. But his head twitched, then turned toward us. His eyes were empty, the sockets ringed with blood, but something stared out of them. Emily tilted her head, mirroring his movement. A low sound came from her throat. The man stood, jerking upright as if pulled by invisible strings. My legs felt weak, shaking beneath the weight of what I was seeing. But then another appeared, and another. The woman from the gas station, the jogger by the park, faces I hadn't let myself remember, all shuffling forward, their limbs twisted. The sound they made, a low, gravely moan, layered and deep, wasn't noise. It was communication, and I realized the truth. They weren't individuals. They were connected, not to each other, but to the hunger, to me, to us. I looked at Emily, her blood-streaked face impassive, and I knew we were leading them, guiding them. Grace. The hunger stirred, roaring with purpose. I turned toward the dark horizon, where she was still running, still hiding. The horde moved with me, their jerking steps falling into rhythm. We stand at the edge of the hill, the town sprawled out below us like a patchwork of light and shadow. Street lamps flicker, faint and distant, their glow seeping through the trees. The hunger twists inside me, relentless, pulling me forward. Beside me, Emily twitches, her bloodied hand jerking at her side, her head tilting toward the lights. She growls low, her broken body still and yet coiled, ready. For a fleeting moment, something stirs, a memory, faint but sharp. Grace's laughter as she spun in the backyard, her hands outstretched to the sky. Emily leaning against the doorframe, smiling, her hair catching the sunlight. My family, but the hunger shreds it, devours it. I glance at Emily, her clouded eyes fixed on the town, her mouth twisted into something between a snarl and a grin. The bond between us is no longer love, it's need, endless, insatiable. The horde gathers behind us, their collective presence amplifying the pull. I feel their hunger like it's my own. Emily tilts her head toward them, growling in unison. There's no division between us now, just a single relentless instinct binding us together. The lights of the town seem closer, brighter. The scent of life hangs in the air, thick and intoxicating. The hunger whispers, louder now, surging with the weight of the others. The mantra swells in my mind, stronger than before. Grace, grace, grace. Then, music. It drifts up the hill, cutting through the cool night air. The horde behind me stills, their jerking movements halting as the sound reaches them too. I shuffle closer to the edge of the hill. The source of the sound becomes clear, a parade winding through the heart of the town. A line of floats glinting in the glow of street lamps. The faint murmur of a crowd rises and falls, a tide of laughter and cheers. A girl, perched high on a float, her silhouette framed by an arch of shimmering lights. She wears a crown, its rhinestones catching the light in sharp, brilliant flashes. Homecoming. The word slides into my thoughts like an echo from another life, a memory scraped raw by the hunger. The horde stirs, their murmurs rising into a single, unified sound, a deep groan that ripples through the trees like a storm wind. The parade below doesn't hear it, their cheers drowning out the first whispers of doom. Emily lunges forward, and the horde follows, their shuffling steps gaining momentum. The trees shake with their movements, the ground trembling as the mass of us begins to descend. The hunger in me surges, unrelenting, unstoppable. The distance between us and the town closes, the fragile tether of memory slipping from my grasp. Grace. The name whispers through my mind one last time before the hunger consumes it. The horde moves as one, and we descend the hill, lifer. The parking lot was empty, except for dry weeds squeezing up through cracks in the asphalt, except for the deserted, rusting basketball hoop on one end, except for rustling leaves skittering across fading parking spaces in the gathering dusk, except for oil spots shimmering with rainbow colors after a recent sprinkling. The parking lot was empty. And because fate is resourceful, a steady, gloomy rain started falling, blurring any hope of discovering the mysterious body called in by an anonymous tip. What's in the corner by that dilapidated chain link fence? my partner, Andy, asked. Looks like piles of garbage bags being buried by soggy leaves from here, I answered. I'll circle around for a closer look. I detect movement. Do dead bodies move? Nah, just rats crawling all over. Better get out and take a good look. Bummer the rain is getting worse, and the wind is picking up, turning this into a chilly, miserable autumn evening. Not even a sliver of a moon. Why is that always the way when a body shows up? Andy complained. Can't we simply call the coroner's office to come claim the neatly wrapped package? They would love that and have our badges if it turned out to be nothing more than trash. We gotta confirm whatever it is. Sorry. Get your slicker on and take your flashlight. I'll be ready to call it in. I pulled the squad car up as close as I could as he prepared to exit. Suddenly, lightning flashed. Thunder pealed as a hail of bullets pounded the passenger side. Andy fell back inside his head, exploding and pouring gray matter all over me and the upholstery. Reacting instinctively, I spun out of the lot, laying new rubber on the old asphalt and bumping over the crumbling center meridian, at the same time trying to figure from which gaping windows in the 4-story abandoned factory building the bullets were spewing. Cursing under my breath. F***ing prank call! How can this be happening? Collecting my scrambled wits, I squealed a UI about half a block away and paused on the side of the street, looking back at the front of the building. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, perps were scurrying out of doors carrying backpacks and rolled up bedding. They appeared homeless, but any of them were potential suspects, and they were all getting away along with the weapons while I was on the horn to Central. Like a crazy man possessed, I ground into gear and plowed ahead, showering taser rays from my weapon, aiming at legs to slow them down. So what if I hit a few with my bumper? We would need witnesses. Officer down, send armored SWAT, was all I remember shouting into the mic. I sped out of retaliation range and waited for backup, not knowing if any would be available. All I wanted to do was hold what was left of my friend and partner. An 18-year veteran of the force, he was already looking forward to retiring and spending more time with his beautiful wife, Jolene, and his teenaged sons, Andrew Jr. and Joshua. I remember watching those boys grow up. How am I ever going to face them? As the senior officer, I'm the one who was supposed to be protecting him. Instead, I delivered him into a hail of bullets. We let our guard down, dear boy. I don't have anyone waiting at home for me. Why couldn't it have been me with a new hole in the head? It can't even be an opened casket. No mortician can put the pieces back together. Bleak rain continued to fall into the chill autumn night, highlighted by blue and red strobing lights and streaking lightning punctuated by thunder. By the time the captain and lieutenant got there, I know I looked like a blubbering idiot, shivering and quaking. More squads and a special weapons van soon arrived. Don't go in there without armor and shields. I think it was a deliberate ambush set up to kill as many police as they could. Got a fake tip about a body being found, but we were supposed to deliver the bodies. I'd say the bullets were coming from the 2nd and 3rd floor broken windows, but so many people scrambled out of the building, you may not find any evidence. Still, someone could be waiting to claim more victims. I put a few down out front. Gotta go find some more. Bet those defund the police activists are happy with this carnage. Force is already down to bare bones. Slim odds we'll be able to round up all 'em. Easy, Cooper. Look at yourself. You hit it all? You've done all you're going to do tonight. Lieutenant Kramer and I will handle it from here. Someone will assess how you're doing while we assess the situation, Captain Crane commanded. Soon, ambulances were on the scene with emergency medical technicians attending to those witnesses I hit and myself. Bloody, headless Andy was scooped into a body bag and our pockmarked unit was hauled in for evidence. Ignoring all my protesting, I was delivered to the hospital and examined for holes. Hard to determine what was me and what was pieces of Andy. Really, Doc, I'm still in one piece. Only need to clean the gore off. I'll be all right. You're shaking like a leaf ready to fall. When I'm done with you, I'll assign a trauma evaluator before you crash and burn. Losing a partner like that will have long-term effects if left unaddressed. Doctor's orders. Time off while you see a therapist. I'll have the support of all the guys in the precinct. I'm not sure about a shrink, but I promise you, I'm gonna be someone's worst nightmare once I get back on the street to find the monsters that riddled us. They don't understand what they've created. I'll never retire. I'm a lifer now. You can bet. Gonna rain long-term regrets down on 'em. Noises from the wardrobe. I was crying when Mummy came to tuck me in for the night. Come on, Jamie, my love. Dry those tears away. And please, let's not have any more of that silly nonsense about monsters in your wardrobe again tonight, she whispered, stroking my cheek. You know how cross Bill gets about it. Bill, my stepfather. A horrid man, always shouting at me for one thing or another. How I wish he and Mummy had never met. It was only since he had come to live with us that the scary noises had begun. But they are real, Mummy, I swear to you. I hear them. She sighed and stood up, padded over to the wardrobe and opened the door, revealing a small closet packed with my clothes on hangers, which she shuffled from side to side. See, sweetheart, only your clothes in here. There's nothing at all to be frightened of now, is there? I swallowed as hard as I could and managed a tiny little shake of my head. Bill stood watching at the door. He narrowed his eyes, giving me one of his mean sideways looks, and told me that if I disturbed them again that night, I would have to stay inside my room the whole of the following day. Mummy was watching me, so she didn't see the expression in his eyes. He never does it when she's looking. She smiled, kissed me again, and walked over to him. Look, we'll leave your nightlight on for you, my darling, she said. Good night now. It was my shivering that woke me. It was exactly 3 o'clock. I am sure of that because I heard our grandfather clock in the hall downstairs chime 3 times. I was ice cold. My duvet had tumbled to the floor and my fingers and toes felt numb. Outside it was ever so windy and raindrops were hammering against the window pane. I liked to keep my curtains open so I could see the man in the moon when he smiled at me. That night, though, I couldn't see him at all. The clouds were hiding him from me. I reached down for my duvet and wrapped it around me, blowing on my fingers to warm them up. That's when I heard it, the rattling of someone fiddling with the wardrobe doorknob. I longed to shout for Mummy, but I knew Bill would be angry if I disturbed them. Instead, I slowly pulled the pillow over my head and tried my best not to listen, but it was no use. Then came a familiar sound. My wardrobe door always creaked when you opened it slowly. I could tell that it was edging open, little by little. You couldn't mistake those short staccato creaks as the door jerked. It had to be the monster, and tonight it was coming out to get me. Normally it stayed inside the wardrobe. My heart began hammering in my ears so loudly, I remember being terrified that it would hear. Curling myself into a ball as tightly as I possibly could, I squeezed my eyes shut and bit down on my lip to stop myself from crying out loud. I remember tasting the blood as it trickled into my mouth, but I still didn't dare move an inch. Eventually, the door stopped moving, and I heard a shuffling of something brushing against wood. Peeping through my fingers, I was just about able to make out a human shape in the dim glow of my nightlight. A smallish figure was standing at the bottom of my bed, staring at me. I could hardly believe it. The monster was no bigger than me. But the thing was, it was pure evil. I just knew. I think that was when I wet the bed in terror. I couldn't help myself. But I couldn't let it know. I remember the sensation of warm liquid spreading down my legs and hoping that if I simply refused to budge, the horrid monster might not find out. Maybe if I recited the Lord's Prayer to myself, it would go away and leave me alone. It stayed there, watching me for ages, whilst I prayed with all my heart for it not to hurt me. Eventually it hissed, "It's time!" Then it stomped over to my door, cracked it open, and slipped out onto the landing. When I heard it knocking on my parents' bedroom door, I almost had heart failure. My stepfather would be furious. It hammered on the door again, and then I heard Bill groan and ask in his cross voice what the hell I thought I was up to. Suddenly, their bedroom door crashed open and slammed against the wall. What I heard in the next few seconds were the worst sounds I had ever heard in my entire life. First, there was a scuffling, and I heard Bill swear out loud. After that, there were lots of heavy crashes, followed by a kind of gurgling and a piercing shriek that sounded like Mummy's voice. Afterwards, I heard her screaming, and screaming. There were more bangs, then a few resounding thuds and weird moaning noises. And still, the screaming didn't stop. What could I do? I wanted to run and help Mummy, but how could I? Paralyzed by fear, I jammed my fingers hard into my ears to block out her screams. After what seemed like ages, there was silence. Utter silence. Not a sound. I tell you, that deafening silence was 10 times worse than the screaming. I then watched, horrified and open-mouthed, as the monster crept stealthily past my bed without so much as a single glance in my direction, wrenched the wardrobe door open, and stepped inside. It wasn't until it had pulled the door firmly shut with a click that I felt able to move. My pajama bottoms were still soaking wet, and now they felt yucky and cold, but I didn't even care. I jumped up and shot out of my room to see what the monster had done. It had hurt Mummy, I was certain. I had to help her. I spotted Bill first. He lay sprawled face down in the entrance to their bedroom. I didn't care two hoots about Bill, but where was Mummy? I needed to find Mummy. I leaped over the motionless form that had been my stepfather and slipped to my knees in a dark red, sticky puddle of gooey stuff, slowly expanding across the parquet from underneath his head. It was gross. I wiped my hands clean on my pajamas as I struggled to my feet and gazed around. The room looked like a scene from one of those scary murder movies Bill liked to watch on the TV. There she was. My dear mother was slumped sideways, half in, half out of the bed. Her frilly white nightdress was crimson. Her beautiful hazel eyes were wide open, still full of shock, her mouth gaping in a now silent scream. A huge kitchen knife protruded from her throat. I recognized it. It was the sharp, shiny one from the back of the kitchen drawer, the one Bill always used to carve the lamb on Sundays. As gently as I could, I gripped the smooth brown handle of the knife and tried to lever it out of her poor, lifeless body, but it was ever so difficult to do. When it finally came free, there was an awful slurping noise, and more blood trickled down her neck. I fell backwards and let the knife drop to the floor. The coppery smell of all that blood was suddenly overpowering. I think that must have been when I began to scream. I was still screaming when the police broke down the door, having been alerted by Mr. Wilson, our next-door neighbor. I very quickly learned that, just like Mummy and Bill, they didn't believe there was anything or anybody in the wardrobe. Even to this day, nobody believes a word of what I say. It has become unbearably hot in this room. I start to feel skittish and wipe my sweaty palms up and down my jumpsuit legs to prevent my knees from jiggling up and down. It is made of scratchy nylon material. Horrid orange color, too. My jaw clenches tight. "Why doesn't anybody believe me, doctor?" I whisper through gritted teeth. That's all I can remember. I swear to God I have not invented anything. It is honestly what happened on the night my mother and that man were killed. My hands ball themselves into fists. I have learned this is not considered good behavior, however, so I force myself to uncurl them, finger by finger, and carefully place both my rigid hands, palm down, and fingers outstretched on my lap. Tears are flowing, dripping from my chin to my chest. I let them fall, but they begin to cause the cloth to become clammy, and it sticks to my chest. Feels like blood. God, I can't stand it. My left eye twitches and I begin to rock back and forth. My throat is dry. I feel myself slipping. Dr. Simpson is staring at me. "All right, James. I think that is more than enough for today," he says, removing his spectacles and placing them with his pen and pad on the small table at his side. "You've done well. This is fine progress we have made this afternoon. I believe our sessions are finally getting somewhere." He then smiles and reaches for my hand. I'm sweating, shaking, still sobbing. "I'm proud of you, James. This is the first time in the 11 years you've been in here with us that you have actually mentioned these sentiments of ambivalence towards your stepfather. It is excellent that you are beginning to admit and evacuate any feelings of pent-up hatred you have been suppressing all this time." He hands me a small plastic cup and presses a button on his pager. "Here you go now. Take your meds. Look, the nurse is here to escort you back to your ward. I'll see you for our next session, same time next week."